This is Jeff Manion for Macquarie Special Event Stations, and a great pleasure to speak to one of the world's greatest voices, and has been for quite a few weeks now. His name is Jan Peerce. Jan Peerce, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Dear, I don't want to make you feel aged, but I imagine that Jan Peerce, and I feel he's been around ever since I can remember. And I'm only a kid, you know.
He's been around ever since I can remember.
Is that right? Jan Peerce is noted not only as one of the greatest voices that America ever produced, but also for his wonderful presence and sense of humour and other things that make him so particularly individual when he performs. Do you agree to all that?
Well, if the occasion calls for a little comedy, I'm up on it. But I'm also a very serious artist, and in other words, I don't tell jokes when I'm doing a serious aria.
No, it wouldn't go well in the middle of Rigoletto
No.
or Traviata.
No Traviata.
Not really. Jan, what age is a voice? By that question, I mean, you obviously have the secret that you are still in very good voice, and you have been around for a considerable time. Other voices that we won't name, for obvious reasons, that have got to maybe 50, 60,
Maybe,
and are no longer...
maybe 40.
Maybe 40, and can no longer perform. What's the secret?
There's not a secret. There are a number of reasons for it. First, you must be an artist who appreciates the little gift that God gives you. You must do the best you can in developing it, treating it with kindness. And by that I mean not to overstep your bounds and do repertoire that doesn't belong to you. Also to do the kind of music that fits into the compass of your voice and your personality. In other words, I never did Wagnerian things like Siegfried, although I did it on radio years ago. I don't even do Valkyrie, but the first thing that Toscanini heard me do was an excerpt from Valkyrie. Nevertheless, I always found out what my métier was, and there I remained to the present day. And with that, with a little kindness to your voice, no forcing, using the gifts that you have. Not only voice alone is not enough, but there's a diaphragm to be considered. There are resonance chambers. In other words, you must sing without effort and without forcing. And if you're healthy and God gives you a good body to cope with it, then you can last for a long time.
For a while, then there comes tomorrow, so must end the dance. Just for a while, oh my sweet, let's borrow heaven while we have the chance. Thrilled by your touch, for I love you oh so much. Let's give this new romance a trial. Maybe, who knows, that before the evening goes, you'll be mine forevermore, not for a while. Touch, for I love you oh so much. Let's give this new romance a trial. Maybe, who knows, that before the evening goes, you'll be mine forevermore, not for a while.
Not many legit singers, as I call them legit, what I mean is legit trained singers, seem to have the propensity to sing pop music. Jan Peerce has been able to do this over the years, and that has made you once again different from many other classical singers.
Well, there's a reason for that, too. I had a past. You know, I was a violinist at one time.
And the dance band
And the
leader.
dance band violinist, a jazz violinist.
A jazz violinist?
Yes.
What, inspired by
plus-
people like Venuti?
Joe Venuti, that he was in my time. I wasn't as good as Venuti or Johnny Augustine or some of the others, but we grew up in that era. And
So you there developed the feel for it.
well, of course, I always knew what a pop tune is and how to treat it. In other words, if I sing something of a lighter nature, I don't use the same approach as I do with the aria from Pagliacci. Although singing must be singing, you sing with your voice, but there's a way of overdoing on a pop tune and making it sound too operatic.
That's right. I think that's where most fall down, that have been legitimately trained and haven't had, as you did, a little experience in pop music, or in jazz, we may as well say.
Yes.
Don't get the feel, haven't got the feel, still sing in a legitimate form, and are trying to sing music that's not, wasn't made.
Well,
to
it
be
doesn't
sung that
belong.
way.
It's not their métier.
That's right. Interesting thing about your great song, Bluebird of Happiness, which I suppose I was going to say you're sick to death of hearing, Bluebird of Happiness.
I'm not. I love it. Why should I be sick of it? It's a good piece of music. It's what we classify as a little corny. Well, loving your mother is corn.
Sure, and loving your dog.
Loving your dog is corn. And loving your corn is corny.
That's right. Bluebird of Happiness was written by a fella called Harmat. Did he write-
Harmati.
Harmati.
Yeah.
Did he-
Shandor Harmati.
Oh,
And let me tell you about Mr. Harmati. May he rest in peace.
surely.
He was a very legitimate musician. He was the conductor at one time of the Omaha Symphony Orchestra
that
in Omaha,
right?
Nebraska. And he wrote this number out of necessity. He was commissioned to write a number for Jan Peerce while I was at the Radio City Music Hall. And this was a number he wrote, never thinking that it would take off, and neither did I think that it'll take off.
Amazing. Did he write anything else of note?
Not that I know of. He wrote a lot of things, but nothing that took off.
Nothing like Bluebird of Happiness. That's amazing. Any rough idea how many copies of that have sold over
Oh,
the
very
years?
easily.
You know, do you?
Yes, 1.75 million. But the marvelous part of this, it may not sound like too much, because a pop singer who has a hit song sells 6 million in 5 weeks.
Sure.
But you know, after the 6 weeks are over, or the 10 weeks are over, you forget the name of the song, you forget the name of the man who sang it, you certainly don't know who wrote it, and it just blows up and nothing happens. This has been going from generation to generation, and the reason it is as popular today as it has been 20 years ago is there are new people coming in. You know, those youngies who are become oldies and becoming a little more mature, they're discovering it, and I'm glad.
Bless this house, O Lord, we pray. Make it safe by night and day. Bless these walls so firm and stout, keeping want and trouble out. Bless the roof and chimneys tall, let thy peace lie over all. Bless this door that it may Bless these windows shining bright, letting in God's heavenly light. Bless the hearth ablazing there, with smoke ascending like a prayer. Bless the folk who dwell within, keep them pure and free from sin. Bless us all that we may be fit, O Lord, to dwell with thee. Bless us all that one day we may dwell, O Lord, with thee.
Nightclubs, opera, concerts, films, TV, Broadway. For a classical tenor, that's quite a record. Jan, which of those, I mean, you've done them all. Which of those do you like to do best?
You
Or
must
did
speak
you
in the
like?
presence. When you talk with me, never say you've done them all. I'm
Well,
doing them all, thank God.
You are doing.
Yes. And to me, versatility has been always a very important part of my vocabulary and my life. If an artist just concentrates on being an opera singer, for me it's not enough. I spent 28 years at the Metropolitan Opera, but that wasn't enough. I would have been sick and tired of doing opera every day of my life, although I love it. It is my life. Yet, you must show that you have another branch of your... You must run the gamut. And why shouldn't an opera singer be able to sing a ballad? Why shouldn't an opera singer be able to sing a Schubert Lied or a Brahms song? Why shouldn't an opera singer be a musician as God would want him to be, and not just make a noise and make a big sound? So I have concentrated on every possible branch of music, whether it's cantorial music, Israeli music, Yiddish folk songs, Italian folk songs, and so on down, and Schubert and Brahms and Handel, and I don't mean to brag, but I'm very proud of it.
The world's proud of that too, and love Jan Peerce for it. You've done fiddler quite considerably, haven't you?
I'm doing fiddler, sir.
Broadway and...
I started 7 years ago.
What's the tent? Your music tents.
Yes,
What does
we
mean
have
by
summer
music
theater,
I see.
and we have we call them theater in the round,
Uh-huh.
and they're old tents where people come in on a hot summer evening, and that the stage is in the center, and people are sitting all around it. You can almost touch the artist, and we did Fiddler on a Roof
Fiddler,
in
that
those
way.
and also legitimate theaters too. In fact, I'm going back to the tents this summer. When I get back, we call it summer in the States, doing fiddler, and also doing. I'm a part of a new variety show. I don't know if you've heard of a great comedian in the States called Myron Cohen.
Yes, yes,
Very
definitely.
chic, very wonderful man, really classy, and I have great respect for him. And we have a girl singer, Elisa Kashi, who's an Israeli singer, but who does a fantastic kind of a pop act, modern, and Little Peerce. And we'll share the program. They do the first half, they divide the first half, I do the entire second half, and we're looking forward to a successful summer.
That sounds like a great show. How are these tent theatres? When we talk of tents, I think of circuses and high roof and all that sort of thing. Acoustically, for you to perform in, are they obviously?
Well, acoustically, at times it can leave something to be desired if you're going to rely on natural sound. But you have amplification. They've got mics hanging from up above, and you have some all around the floor, and they give it as much as a natural sound as humanly possible. But it has to be amplified to make some sort of an impression.
You've done many, many times, and you're still doing Fiddler at the Rothschilds. Laugh a little, cry a little. Now that was written about you, I believe.
No, it wasn't really written about me. It was it was written by a gentleman who had a wonderful idea. You know, when you see Fiddler, at the end of Fiddler, if you remember, there's an exodus. Everybody leaves Anatevka. Now, where are they going? Where did they go? Very simple. They went to America.
Mm-hmm.
Greener fields. Wonderful possibility of developing. And this show, Laugh a Little, Cry a Little, opened, the first scene was Ellis Island, the immigration point. And the idea was great, but he never developed it enough to make it big enough to follow Fiddler on the Roof. But someday, and we did it successfully, but never on Broadway. And I was the one who has kept it away from Broadway until they can get into it and delve into it, and hopefully we'll do it. Great show.
My romance doesn't have to have a moon in the sky. My romance doesn't need a blue lagoon standing by. No month of May, no twinkling stars, no hideaway, no soft guitars. My romance doesn't need a castle rising in Spain, nor a dance to a constantly surprising refrain. Wide awake, I can make my most fantastic dreams come true. My romance doesn't need a thing but you. I won't kiss your hand, madame, crazy for you though I am. I'll never woo you on bended knee. No, madame, not me. We don't need that flowery fuss. No, sir, madame, not for us. My romance doesn't need a castle rising in Spain, nor a dance to a constantly surprising refrain. Wide awake, I can make my most fantastic dreams come true. My romance doesn't need a thing but you.
Still talking about Fiddler, Jan. Fiddler's Tevye is normally played by a baritone or a bass. You are a tenor.
Tenor, yes. In fact, you're you're very gracious about it. In most cases in the States, Fiddler was played by non-singers. You can't classify him. Even the great Zero Mostel, who introduced the show, he was the first Tevye. Well, you wouldn't classify him. May he rest in peace. You won't classify him as a bass, tenor, or anything.
As a singer, no, you're right there.
You see? And then you had Luther Adler, a great actor, but Luther Adler did the best he could to sing. Then Herschel Bernardi, not a school singer. I was number 7, you know.
Were you?
Yes, had to build up until I got the idea, and it was my wife and my manager who helped sell me the idea of doing Fiddler. And I'm so happy and thankful to them, and I'm happy doing it.
How long did it take you to write the book of your life? I know you were thinking about it and in preparation, and writing it for many, many years, weren't you?
Well, yes, but actual writing concentration was almost 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
In
But you-
that book, with all the things that you have done, what were some of the great highlights? What were some of the great highlights?
Well,
for
I
Jan
had
Peerce?
a wonderful life, and I'm having a wonderful life. I've had highlights like being discovered after being rejected by so many people. You know, when I'd go and do an audition, and people would say, "Well, he's too light for heavy work. He's too heavy for light work." The Broadway people said he belongs in opera. The operatic people said I belong on Broadway. Neither one gave me a job, and neither one gave me a chance. But you keep struggling and practicing and studying and working hard, and all of a sudden, a man appears, a man by the name of Roxy. I don't know if you know the name of Roxy. Roxy was responsible for all the big movie houses that featured great presentations with the Rockettes, for instance.
Oh, yes,
But
yes.
before that, he had the Roxy Theater and the Capitol Theater, and he had big symphony orchestras, 100-piece orchestra playing in the movie house. And he would get artists of note. And I remember when I was breaking in, they had Misha Levitsky, the great pianist, was featured in the movie house, playing for people who probably never heard a piano recital. He said the public is entitled to hearing good music, even at a picture show. And it was a great thing, and it developed to what later turned out to be the Radio City Music Hall. And then, after that, when he took me to the Radio City Music Hall, while I was singing, a man by the name of Toscanini, the great Toscanini, heard me do a broadcast. And you know, invited me to do an audition, and immediately booked me to do the tenor part in Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And after that, it was all history. I was with him for 15 years, and I did the most fabulous. We have records to prove it. Traviata, Bohème, Bal Louis Mascara, the Hymn of Nations, and you go on down the line. And what I'm proud of my affiliation with Toscanini, those records that we have and are being played and sold at the moment. And mind something, we made Traviata in 45 or 46. That's over 30 years ago. That these were actual performances. They weren't made in studios, you know, where you went in and you say, "Hey, I don't like that B flat, let's do it over again." Nah, these were performances. That was what happened in Carnegie Hall or in Studio 8H at the time that you did it. And I was proud of that affiliation. And then came the Met.
That's right. San Francisco Opera, the first Alfredo was your debut, wasn't it?
No,
it wasn't?
in Rigoletto, my first Rigoletto
Rigoletto.
in San Francisco, with Lily Pons and Lawrence Tibbett.
Metropolitan
Traviata,
Traviata.
November 41.
Dear oh dear. That's a wonderful book. I haven't read it, but it is called, obviously, Bluebird
The
of
Bluebird of
Happiness.
Happiness, yeah.
We've got a story about bluebirds and birds generally, too, we'll talk about in a moment, too. But right now, let's hear Jan Peerce.
Everyone loves a love story told of a maid and a man. But listen to my love story. It ended before it began. A beautiful lady in blue, we met just like two shadows do. Not one word was said, she kissed me and fled, and our little romance was through. A beautiful lady in blue, she thought I was someone she knew. Her lips so divine were not meant for mine. The night seemed to laugh at us two. How did I know she was lovely? There wasn't a moonbeam aglow. How would I know there's a heaven unless my heart told me so? lifetime was spent in one little moment with a beautiful lady. In bloom was the night, the moon was mellow above, and I had fallen in love with a dream, a lovely illusion. A beautiful lady in blue, and strange as it may sound to you, a lifetime was spent in one little moment with a beauty